You're listening to Soundside. I'm Libby Denkman. A few times a week, I sit down with another journalist to talk about the biggest news developing right now and how it affects the Pacific Northwest. We call it Front Page. It's a quick way to catch up on the most fascinating local headlines. And speaking of most fascinating, he's a real Renaissance man, and he's back in the studio with me today. Mike Lewis, journalist and owner of the Streamline Tavern in Seattle.
Renaissance
Welcome, man. Yeah, you biked
over here. What part of the Renaissance?
I mean, the one that had just,
rampant
culture
disease.
and arts and everything all right. Combined together.
I'll take that.
Analysis, logic. Mike Lewis is here once again. I really appreciate you, man. And we're going to get to our first story on Front Page. Okay, I officially like the Shakira song. It has turned the corner for me from cringe to I'm enjoying it. Seattle was electric on Friday for the USA-Australia World Cup match, and it wasn't just the performance on the pitch, although that was very, very nice. The stadium crowd looked amazing on television. The fan watch parties in Pioneer Square and the waterfront.
I went to the one in Seattle Center.
Ooh,
weirdly enough, that was
nice.
My birthday, so I went to the one, the Mural Amphitheater, and it was incredible.
I didn't even know they had one there.
They have two in Seattle Center. They also have in the Armory. You can watch it indoors, but actually the outdoor one, especially on a day like that, was perfect. And it was loaded with Australian fans too, and everyone was having a good time.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, the city really felt like it was showing off, and I feel like these investments that have been made in the outdoor spaces, especially the waterfront. You saw that Overlook Walk was completely packed with fans all the way down to Pier 62. The Fox broadcasted the pregame there, and it felt like an NFL or college football game day. Like that was the intensity that we were talking about and the number of fans and everything, and just a really great showing for the city. I don't know. What did you notice? So you were there at the Seattle Center party.
Well, at that one in particular, you had to get there early. A friend got there early to get a blanket down because there was no way by the time it was an hour out you were going to be able to. But even then, they did a good job. Like there were good sight lines from everywhere. The beer garden was equal size to everything else.
That's important.
Which was important
Vital.
On a day like that.
Yep.
And people were there to have a good time. I mean, it was also, a U.S. win certainly helped, but people were in a good mood, and the Australian fans were having a good time, and no one was like it. It felt to me like I've always said this about the World Cup. The World Cup at its best is the upside of nationalism, right? It really can be. When it's positive, when you see it, you go writ large in the United States. I mean, Seattle is showing off as the best soccer town in the country, without any question. And here's a funny thing. So the U.S. men's team is 7-0 in Seattle, which begs the question, why have they not played more games here? And the reason is turf. We had to put in, as most people know, we had to put in natural grass because that's a requirement by FIFA, and it's a good requirement.
The Lumen field turf is not going to fly.
No, it doesn't, and that's why the U.S. men's team never plays here. Looking at this, looking at the future, looking how good Seattle showed I'm hoping that maybe they've reached an agreement with the Seahawks and decide to, if the weather's good enough to have grass year round here, there's no reason not to. I know it costs a little bit more money, but it also costs money when people get injured and their injury rate is higher on turf.
Yep.
Everything about it has been like a big showing off party for Seattle, which I like as well.
Yeah, and this has history here, right? Jerry Brewer with the Athletic underlined that by talking to some of the men who kind of laid the groundwork over the years. So he caught up with Fred Mendoza, who was the board chairman of the Washington State Public Stadium Authority, that successfully lobbied for, what was it? Was it CenturyLink originally? Yeah, so the NFL stadium, which was designed as NFL soccer stadium. That was part of the lobbying effort.
And part of what Paul Allen insisted on.
Yep. And so it was always meant to be a World Cup ready location. And then, of course, Adrian Hanauer, who is the majority owner of the Sounders, moved them from the USL into the MLS and really he told Jerry Brewer that my adult life has been dedicated to this effort of, bringing soccer and highlighting what was already an amazing soccer culture here in the Pacific Northwest. Casey Keller being from Olympia, there's always been this really strong youth on up fan culture and everything like that.
The Sounders were popular as a USL team. And if you're not familiar with the USL, essentially what Hanauer and company did was move a team, if you want a baseball equivalent, from AAA, effectively, into the major leagues, which is not an easy task because you're starting with a talent deficit. MLS helped them out, and now Don Gerber, who's in charge of the MLS, Major League Soccer, said he doesn't even know what the league would be without Seattle. That's how important the city has become as far as soccer culture goes.
Yeah, the great news is, too, that Seattle has another good chance of hosting the USA once again.
No jinxing.
Now, I don't want to. I definitely want to say we have a chance. It's a good chance, but it is definitely not confirmed. So we are confirmed to go to the knockout stages. USA with that win, and then the results later in the day locked in the number one spot in the group. Now we go to the round of 32, which is the first knockout round. Now, a number one seed in a group is paired most likely with a number 3 or possibly 2 seed.
That's I understand it, yes.
And that means that the U.S., is going to have a matchup with a team that didn't land as well in their group. If we win that game, huge if, then the round of 16 would host the USA once again in Seattle, which would be an incredible thing. Obviously, knocking on Formica right
absolutely.
now. Yeah, people will lose it.
Yeah, they'll lose it. In the best possible way.
In the best possible way. Not everything is looking rosy, though, for these host cities. And I wonder, especially you being in the hospitality industry, Mike, if you could reflect on this. The New York Times reported on the fact that many host cities, the major host cities, so Kansas City is seeing an uptick in bookings, hotels, people coming into town. But that's a pretty modestly sized city compared with the bigger host cities like New York, LA. New York is seeing a falling in bookings and other travel metrics. In Seattle, bookings are below those of last year across flights, short-term rentals, and hotels, according to industry data. What's going on here? I mean, FIFA promises the world, right? And we just aren't seeing the same kind of tourism as was expected.
Well, when FIFA promises the world, they mean the world for FIFA, right? They don't necessarily mean
yes.
the world for everyone else. The weird thing that you're finding economically in the United States is that it's all the mid-major towns that are doing great. The Kansas Cities of this world.
Yep.
Like, they are really seeing this incredible bump. And remember, one famous city said no to World Cup, and that was Chicago.
Rahm Emanuel.
Exactly. And it seemed like on the front end of it seemed like he probably was the right guy. But now that we're experiencing it, I've completely reversed my opinion on that. I think that the cities that are very expensive, I don't think that the administration has done anything to encourage people to travel here.
Especially not international travelers, which spend the most money.
Exactly. But I do think, and I think Seattle is going to find that it probably did pretty well because the people who are here are spending, and we're going to, where we're not making it on maybe on hotel bookings, we're probably making it other places. In addition to the fact that I know a lot of fans who decided smartly, this is sort of the great World Cup hack in Seattle. Seattle's stadium, by the way, is known now as being the best from walking in mass transit in the United States, easily.
Closest in to everything you want to be doing. Yeah.
Well, and on top of that, there's this. A bunch of people booked houses in both Bremerton and Bainbridge Island, and they take the ferry in. Not only can you clock that reliably every day, you can get on a ferry, maybe have a beer on the ferry. If you're lucky, you're on mass transit, you might see a pod of orcas. And then you get into Seattle, and then you walk to the stadium, and then you walk back.
Amazing commute. Nothing else like it.
And so that economic benefit is actually not playing out in Seattle proper, right? It's paying out in other places, but it's absolutely happening. And I think that those sort of things, I think Seattle is going to, even if it doesn't net out more, because people sometimes also avoid traveling here who are not soccer fans because they don't want to deal with all the crowds. I think Seattle is going to do nothing but good for Seattle tourism, especially when you had all that sort of Seattle is dying garbage, from a few years ago.
Yeah.
This is actually, I think, and I'm not saying the city doesn't have major problems, because certainly it does. And so we put on a lot of nice clothes, but we still have problems, in a city. I would say that this is a good thing.
KUOW tallied up what public entities across the state spent in terms of preparation for the World Cup. And a lot of that was maintenance on mass transit, stuff that maybe would have been needed to be done, but was, officially done because the World Cup was the deadline for it. But other things like stadium upgrades, security, things like that, $120 million to host the World Cup across the state. Tax revenue is expected to be closer to $95 million in terms of the boost. That is according to Visit Seattle. So that number doesn't net out. But what I'm hearing you say, Mike Lewis, is the benefits, the externalities, the future reputation of Seattle, everything like that is going to be good for the city.
The excise taxes. There's a whole bunch of stuff that hasn't been counted yet, and they can estimate, but I think that is going to work out well. But if it just works out in one way, which is reboots Seattle's reputation as a place you should go to, this is going to have a long tail.
Yeah. And just remind people of all the great public spaces that we have. And again, the waterfront being just a primary example of a huge investment, but something that's paid off in the long run. Moving on to our second story in Front Page.
So much people that I know personally have reached out to me asking me what they can do because their parents have cases with her. And like, it feels good, like being able to help other people and raise awareness about what she's doing.
That is Izzy Picasso, who spoke to King 5 last month about her father's experience working with a law firm called Luz Legal, formerly Alexandra Lozano Immigration Law, which closed its doors a couple of weeks ago. We are getting a clearer picture, Mike, of what happened at this gigantic immigration law firm. They had tens of thousands of clients and offices in multiple cities, including Tukwila here in Washington. Reporter Nina Shapiro talked to some former employees and clients about what some likened to an assembly line style operation. Shapiro reports on a really sad situation where some people had basically no chance of getting green cards ultimately, but they were sold this bill of goods about what the self-described lawyer of miracles, Lozano, could achieve. And Shapiro reports that in May, 9 former clients sued Lozano, saying her firm delivered illusory, negligent, and even fraudulent services. 2 weeks later, she gave up her law license rather than face a disciplinary hearing from the state bar over alleged misconduct. And the firm since imploded, leaving a lot of people in the lurch, like Izzy's dad, as you just heard. Total nightmare situation for people who are really vulnerable.
And at a moment in history where these sort of cases are at an all-time high, where you actually need this sort of representation. So it's difficult, I think, in the world of immigration to actually find yourself ranking lower than the coyotes who smuggle people, who are some pretty, generally connected to criminal organizations, and yet this attorney managed to find a place even lower on the ladder than that.
Allegedly, yeah.
Allegedly. I think that there's a certain, the people who decide to prey upon a vulnerable population have a certain place in my thought. I'm not going to, express anything that's going to get me off air.
Well, tell me why it brings up such emotion with you, because you grew up in the Central Valley in California.
And my mom did work with the UFW, did work literally contract translation. My mom is from Panama, and it was always part of our household. I mean, we didn't eat table grapes during the grape boycott. And I understand, like all of us have been talking so much about Cesar Chavez and the problems therein, the massive problems therein. But when I was a kid, he was kind of a hero in the household, right? My mom dealt with him. And that sort of thing, like the people who are vulnerable when they, the old stories, the short-handled hose, any number of things that happened. I always wondered, like, who are these people who are wealthy, who are preying on the people who are so vulnerable? And they can, because they don't really have, beyond you, they don't have legal recourse or financial recourse. And so they're easy marks. And this is what a person who has, like, become I knew the attorney, like a well-known labor attorney in firms in multiple cities. This isn't just here, right? San Antonio, Chicago. It is
near Los Angeles.
In the Los Angeles basin. Like, it is. And the number of cases that are going to be dropped, the number of immigration attorneys who can handle this stuff. I mean, they're already doing, immigration attorneys, from what I understand, talking to a friend of mine in law, are doing record amounts of pro bono work. Record amounts of pro bono work. This is going to tax that even further. They were doing hundreds of cases poorly. Yeah. I don't know. It's incomprehensible. By the way, Nina Shapiro's story is phenomenal.
It really is.
And she's always been one of my favorite reporters in town, but this was a story that needed to happen.
Yeah, she did a great job reporting this out. So other clients, it wasn't just people getting promises that couldn't be fulfilled. There was also this tactic that the Bar Association highlighted when they, wrote the letter, basically, highlighting a lot of the issues that they found with Lozano's practices, where people would, be applying for help with getting a green card. And the firm would reportedly push them towards this path of using a domestic Violence Against Women Act route to permanent residency, which is a thing that was developed to protect people. So if you were applying for a green card, but you were basically married to an abuser, you wouldn't have to rely on that person in order to go through all the steps. So it wouldn't be forcing you to stay with your abuser. But this law firm was allegedly using that path for people that had not said anything about abuse, and they were shocked. They didn't. The clients say they didn't review the filings, and when they were with a new attorney because the firm imploded, they were shocked at seeing, Lozano's firm had alleged that my husband was abusive or my daughter was abusive and things like that. And these are the types of practices that are being looked into.
Well, and that is not in itself a bad thing. But what it also does is it undermines the people with legitimate claims.
No, exactly.
Which is so they managed to find a way to both not help their clients and to harm people who they weren't even working with.
Yeah. Lozano is facing a federal civil suit from some of those former clients I mentioned. Also scrutiny from the Department of Homeland Security's USCIS's fraud detection branch. Now, I want to read Lozano's attorney statement that they gave to the Seattle Times. Her practice has always been to fight for her clients, zealously pursue every lawful option available to them, and support their efforts to build lives in this country. The results speak for themselves. Alexandra denies the allegations that have been raised by a small number of individuals. She will address them fully in court. Until that process is played out, we would encourage withholding judgment based on allegations alone. Okay. You are listening to Soundside on KUOW. I'm Libby Dankman. I'm here with journalist and bar owner Mike Lewis. This is Front Page. We're going to take a quick break. And Mike, coming up next, we're going to talk about the potential flight of billionaires from Washington State. We are also going to discuss why every Starbucks store in South Korea closed on Monday afternoon. It is kind of a wild story about marketing misfires, and we'll explain what that means coming up in just a minute right here on KUOW. Back with more Soundside. I'm Libby Dankman, joined by journalist and bar owner Mike Lewis. And Mike, we're going through the biggest headlines of the day on Front Page. Mm-hmm. Here is our story number 3 for Front Page. There's no sense crying over every mistake. Okay, I didn't recognize this, but my producers assure me that is the credits music for a smash hit game you all may remember. It's called Portal, which came out 18 years ago. I cannot believe that.
That is shocking.
Yes. The publisher is Bellevue-based Valve, makers of other major franchises, Counter-Strike, Left 4 Dead, Half-Life. They also make Steam, which is an incredibly ubiquitous platform for PC games. Tons of games are based on Steam. So this is a huge player in the video game industry. And Valve's co-founder, Gabe Newell, has made headlines for a real estate purchase recently. The Wall Street Journal says he is the new proud owner of a $70.8 million mansion north of Miami. It sits on 2 acres, including waterfront. I watched a long YouTube tour of the property when it was on sale in 2020. It's very nice, although maybe not my taste. It's a little Miami taste.
It's very Miami.
It's a lot of marble. So another billionaire hitting the road from Washington State. If you read certain corners of Twitter, this is the biggest deal in the world. I can't tell, Mike. I mean, most of these guys, Bezos, Schultz, they cited family reasons. They kind of seemed like they were just done with Seattle for various personal reasons, although Schultz wrote that pretty scathing op-ed about the business environment that he said that Mayor Wilson was creating. The co-founder of Zillow decamped to Las Vegas recently. What do you think? Is Washington driving away its billionaires because of an unfriendly business environment, and is that going to be bad for the state?
I'd separate out the rationale among them. I mean, of course, Mayor Wilson recommended joining a boycott of Starbucks. And so Howard Schultz is going to have a very particular reaction to that, other than the rest of the stuff, which we're talking about, sort of additional, effectively additional capital gains taxes on wealthy people. It's an interesting thing because I think that what's getting lost sometimes in discussion, and trust me, if you hang out in the GeekWire offices, this is a topic of discussion because most of the money we're talking about is new business or tech.
Yeah.
What's happening is that founders are not, and people at the very top of the tier are not happy getting taxed on their own wealth. Understandably, if they've been not taxed on this for a long time and suddenly they're having an additional, and some of those tax bills could be sizable, they just say, all right, I'll just change my location. Now, is this going to result in them moving a company? I don't know. And I think that that's kind of the important thing because remember, most of these people did not arrive in Seattle as millionaires or billionaires. They arrived in Seattle at relatively, varying levels of maybe upper middle class income, many of them not even that. And so how did they build their companies here? Well, they built it because of the University of Washington and loads of talent. And once you get to critical mass, then these other companies start coming in because they know that this is where you got a pool of talent. This is why Apple is here, and this is why Google is here, and this is why Facebook and Snapchat, and on and on and on and on and on.
Yeah, Newell, I will say, was a former Microsoft guy with this co-founder.
There you go.
They worked on Windows, early versions of Windows. So really, started in that milieu.
And
then
Xbox was a
off.
massive driver of the video game industry here, right? These are all things that are related. Now, are these people all going to then, at this point in their careers, reestablish new businesses? I mean, are we talking about job loss, or are we talking about wealth loss? And I don't know how you calculate wealth loss necessarily. They don't want to lose their own money. I don't know that they're actually saying that they are relocating their companies there, right? That doesn't appear to me to be what's being said now. And so I'm not saying this should go unremarked. And I'm not saying that the taxing system is necessarily fair. But I think that if they have the mobility to move elsewhere and the tech community here remains as vibrant as it is, it's probably not, it's not harder on a town to lose the person at the top as long as the company is staying here, honestly. And I'm not being dismissive of it in any way. It's a shame to see people unhappy with Seattle and or Washington State and feel like the business climate is bad, especially for people who benefited from that business climate for the last 2 decades or 3 decades. And so I don't know. There's also plenty.
It's not a good look, right?
Right.
It's not a good feeling.
But I'm not sure that you get to a place where you're doing less. Maybe you're doing investing, but you get to a place where you're starting to build sort of a buttress around your wealth, right? Every rich person gets to that, wealthy person gets to that phase. And some of these are because they want to go to a place where they have fewer taxes. That's their prerogative to do so. And they're mobile enough that you can have a $78 million mansion in Miami and be in Seattle all the time, right?
Yeah, and be with, the people that you're
Exactly.
working with if your workers are still here. I will say when the millionaires tax was instituted by the legislature, they did roll back a significant increase in the estate tax.
Yes, they did.
Which had been called out as a potential driver for people to really move their wealth, maybe not just these top tier billionaires.
That affected people at a lower level.
Yes,
Absolutely did.
Yeah, and we had bumped up, I think, even higher than Hawaii at that point, and which is just an outrageously high comparative to other states' estate tax. So that was rolled back as kind of a seeming like a sop to wealthy people who were kind of looking askance at Washington's tax code. I will say the capital gains tax receipts are super volatile, and that's just kind of the nature of that type of tax. But I mean, you went from the first year that they were collected in Washington State in the $800 million range down to the second year in the $300 million range, and then it popped back up to the $500 million.
And that $800 million was there's 2 individuals who are half of it.
There
right?
were some huge liquidations of stock. In that. And, some people also posited that the second year, because the effort to repeal the capital gains tax was going on, there was some, hey, we're going to hold on to our stuff, see if this thing gets repealed, and then make our decisions going forward. We don't have the receipts for this past tax cycle yet, but that is significant if you are expecting that to make up for the lack of income tax, the lack of
Completely.
Other types of taxes in Washington State. We'll see with the millionaires tax, because that applies. The capital gains tax is like 2,000 to 3,000 households in Washington State per year. It's supposed to apply to. The millionaires tax is more like 20,000 to 30,000.
Right.
So it's a more not really broad base. This is said it tongue in cheek.
Right,
It's a more broad base, tax base, but it should be a little bit more predictable at least. And we'll see again if it's not just these top tier billionaires, although it's harder to keep track, right?
It's very hard to keep track. And it's also it's one of those things that if all of these changes to the tax code in Washington State are leading toward opening the door constitutionally to an actual income tax, that's the stage where everyone needs to really pay attention, because that is going to have. When I was recruited here by the Post-Intelligencer many years ago when I was a reporter there, literally said to me in my interview, and this happened to other people who were recruited to Washington State, like, and this is by way of a very cheap newsroom telling you you're getting a raise when you're not actually getting a raise.
Oh, absolutely.
They tell you that you're not paying a state income tax like it did in California, and thus you're getting a raise.
Yeah.
We're not providing it, but the state is providing it.
I made a similar move. You know, I grew up here. I moved to California for work, and then when I came back, I did feel a little bit like, I feel a little bit richer because I don't have that income tax. Although
and then
California,
you bought your first, your first shopping trip, and you realized I would pay all that back in another way.
I mean, California's tax is just, it's pretty high across the board.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, moving on to our fourth story on Front Page.
먼저 이번 일로 깊은 상처와 실망을 느끼신
That is chairman of a South Korean conglomerate called Shinsegae Group, Chung Yong-jin, who issued a public apology at a press conference late last month, May 26th. Shinsegae Group operates Starbucks Korea, and in the last 24 hours, 2,000 every Starbucks stores in South Korea closed at 3 p.m. for a mandatory history and cultural sensitivity training. The reason for this training is just one of the most disastrous marketing ploys I can remember in recent memory. This was last month when Starbucks Korea debuted a new line of what they were calling tank tumblers. The campaign, which the company called Tank Day, began on the anniversary of the 1980 Gwangju uprising, where at least 165 pro-democracy protesters were killed by the military, which, yes, used tanks and armored personnel carriers to massacre democracy demonstrators. So this uprising is a foundational part of the history of democracy in South Korea. Advocates, see it as this catalyst that led to the toppling of the military dictatorship in 1987. So obviously, the Starbucks tank campaign was poorly received. It also, by the way, comes out just 18 months after. Remember when the former president of South Korea tried to declare a military
and
martial law?
Drummed out of the country.
Yes. Yeah. So people were in the streets. I mean, people are within living memory, very protective of their democratic rights in South Korea. And this Starbucks marketing campaign immediately led to the firing of the head of the Starbucks South Korea. Now, we should say that Shinsegae Group operates South Korean Starbucks under a licensing agreement from Starbucks Global, which is headquartered here in Seattle. Although Starbucks Global also issued an apology, even though they were not responsible for that marketing campaign. This is the third largest Starbucks market in the world behind the U.S. and China.
That,
yeah, so a really big market. And Mike, once this is all said and done, the internal investigation by Shinsegae Group found that there was poor oversight and an over-reliance on AI for this marketing idea. What do you make of that?
Well, I think, one, it's nice for the moment in time where we're at to have a new big excuse. We didn't need, we blew through I got hacked many years ago. We had, I don't know, individual congressmen from what was it, from Montana, the wide stance. We've had a lot of different.
Hiking the Appalachian Trail was my favorite.
Hiking the Appalachian Trail. One of the more creative ones. One of the more creative ones. Like this is one of those things that people are blaming AI while engaging with AI. You can't blame AI. I'm sorry. You should be handling this, and you should be a little bit of a student of history. It's a sad and surprising that they didn't bother, that no one in the marketing department had any sort of knowledge. And we're not talking about history from 100 years ago. It's not even all that long
1980,
ago.
yeah.
Right. I mean, it's certainly for people as old as me, it's not all that long ago. And so it's odd. And I think they probably did the good thing by closing all the stores and like having an immediate, very strong reaction. And honestly, here's the weird thing. They fired someone at the top.
Yeah. Never happens. Didn't fire the guy. Well,
nope.
Possibly there was a rolling firing, but the guy at the top taking the fall is pretty interesting. Mike Lewis, speaking of, the guy at the top, you are just the best on Front Page. I love having you here. I love having your takes on the news. Thank you so much for being here.
Happy to.
Thanks for listening to Soundside. Don't forget you can listen live on KUOW 94.9 Seattle at noon and 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, or anytime right here online at KUOW.org, or of course on your favorite podcast app.